When John McEnroe speaks about tennis greatness, the entire sports world stops to listen. This isn't just another talking head on a television panel reading statistics off a teleprompter. John McEnroe lived the fire. As a 7-time Grand Slam singles champion, a world number 1 in both singles and doubles, and a man who stood across the net battling legends like Björn Borg, Jimmy Connors, and Ivan Lendl during the golden age of racket sports, McEnroe possesses a perspective that very few humans on Earth will ever experience. For the last 3 decades, he has occupied the best seat in the house, sitting in the broadcast booth at Wimbledon, Roland Garros, the US Open, and the Australian Open. He has dissected every single shot, every strategic shift, and every mental battle of the Big Three era. He watched Roger Federer elevate tennis into fine art. He watched Rafael Nadal redefine physical endurance. And he watched Novak Djokovic turn competitive tennis into a mathematical science of unstoppable consistency. So when John McEnroe was asked to sit down and definitively name the 5 greatest male tennis players he has ever seen in his entire lifetime, the tennis community braced itself. In an era dominated by endless social media arguments, tribal fanbase wars, and recency bias, McEnroe's list didn't just cause a debate. It sent shockwaves through the entire sport. Because the way he constructed his top 5, and more importantly, the specific legend he placed at the number 1 spot, settles a debate that has been tearing tennis purists apart for more than a decade. Before we dive into the order, we have to establish McEnroe's criteria. He isn't just looking at Grand Slam tallies, although numbers matter. He is looking at peak dominance, surface versatility, mental strength under extreme pressure, head-to-head records, and the intangible aura a player brought onto the court. Stick around, because as we break down McEnroe's picks from number 5 all the way to his undisputed number 1, you will see how the history of modern tennis was written, and why his choice for the ultimate GOAT is virtually impossible to argue against. Let's get into the list. Starting at number 5, John McEnroe turns back the clock to the man who defined his own career, his greatest rival, and his personal friend, Björn Borg. To modern fans raised on the Big Three, stacking up 20-plus Grand Slams, seeing Borg at number 5 might initially raise some questions. Borg finished his career with 11 Grand Slam titles. But to understand why McEnroe places the iconic Swede in his top 5 over legendary figures like Ivan Lendl, Andre Agassi, Jimmy Connors, or Rod Laver, you have to contextualize what Borg accomplished in his absurdly short prime. Borg didn't just win. He dominated 2 entirely polar opposite surfaces in an era where transitioning from clay to grass was considered nearly impossible. He captured 6 Roland Garros titles on the slow red clay of Paris, and then immediately stepped onto the lightning-fast, low-bouncing grass courts of Wimbledon to win 5 consecutive titles between 1976 and 1980. Think about that for a second. In the late 1970s, tennis rackets were made of heavy wood with tiny sweet spots. Grass played completely differently than clay, yet Borg pulled off the Channel Slam, winning the French Open and Wimbledon back-to-back in 3 consecutive years. McEnroe has stated repeatedly in interviews that Borg brought an aura of absolute invincibility that no player has ever truly replicated. Borg was known as the Iceman. He showed zero emotion, never threw a racket, never argued a call, and never allowed his heart rate to spike. He wore opponents down physically with heavy topspin from the baseline, a precursor to the modern game, and wore them down mentally with his icy composure. McEnroe's relationship with Borg adds a dramatic layer to this selection. Their 1980 Wimbledon final, featuring the famous 18-16 tiebreaker in the 4th set, remains one of the greatest matches ever played in sports history. McEnroe broke through to defeat Borg at the US Open later that year, and at Wimbledon in 1981. But shortly after that 1981 loss, at just 26 years old, Borg walked away from professional tennis entirely, exhausted by the crushing pressure of global stardom. McEnroe has openly admitted that Borg's sudden retirement broke his heart and left a massive void in his own career. McEnroe firmly believes that had Borg played a full career into his early 30s, he wouldn't have stopped at 11 slams. He likely would have pushed past 15 or even 20 Grand Slams long before the modern era. Borg's win percentage at Grand Slams remains an astounding 89.8%, the highest in men's tennis history. For McEnroe, Borg's peak was so high and his impact on tennis popularity so massive that his spot at number 5 is locked in stone. At number 4, John McEnroe selects the man who ruled the 1990s with an iron fist, Pete Sampras. Before Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic completely shattered our perception of tennis longevity, Pistol Pete was universally considered the undisputed gold standard of men's tennis. When Sampras retired in 2002 after winning his final US Open title against his fiercest rival Andre Agassi, his total of 14 Grand Slam titles was widely believed to be a mark that might never be surpassed in our lifetime. McEnroe's appreciation for Sampras comes down to one absolute truth: pure, unadulterated dominance on fast court surfaces and an unmatched ability to play clutch tennis under pressure. Sampras possessed what many historians, including McEnroe, consider the single greatest serve in the history of tennis. It wasn't just the speed, it was the disguisable toss, the precision, and the unbelievable mental ice in his veins. Facing a breakpoint at 30-40 down in the fifth set of a Grand Slam semifinal, Sampras wouldn't just hit a safe serve. He would hammer an unreturnable 125 miles per hour ace down the tee on his second serve like it was nothing. McEnroe highlights Sampras's dominance at Wimbledon, where he won 7 titles in 8 years between 1993 and 2000, as one of the most ruthless stretches of tennis ever seen. On grass and fast hard courts, Sampras's serve and volley game, combined with his lethal running forehand and explosive jumping overhead smash, left opponents completely helpless. Furthermore, Sampras held the ATP year-end world #1 ranking for 6 consecutive years, from 1993 to 1998, a record of sustained season-long consistency that even Federer and Nadal never managed to break. So why isn't Sampras in McEnroe's top 3? The answer lies on the red clay of Paris. Unlike the players who rank above him on this list, Sampras had a glaring vulnerability in his resume: Roland Garros. The slow clay neutralized Sampras's monster serve, extended the rallies, and demanded physical endurance that taxed his system. In 13 appearances at the French Open, Sampras only reached the semifinals once, in 1996. McEnroe notes that while Sampras was virtually invincible on grass and hard courts, his inability to conquer clay prevents him from standing on the top tier of all-surface dominance. Nevertheless, as a 14-time Grand Slam champion who retired at the very top of the world, Pete Sampras lands firmly at number 4 on McEnroe's legend list. At number 3, we enter the pantheon of modern titans, with a man who changed the global perception of tennis forever: Roger Federer. For nearly 2 decades, John McEnroe stood in commentary booths across the globe and openly declared Roger Federer to be the greatest tennis player to ever pick up a racket. McEnroe was captivated, as millions of fans were, by the sheer aesthetic perfection of Federer's game. Federer played tennis not as a grind, but as an art form. His footwork was so light it looked like he was gliding across the court without touching the ground. His liquid forehand, his versatile one-handed backhand, his effortless serve motion, and his tactical genius created a style that felt poetic. From 2004 to 2008, Federer orchestrated the most dominant prime in tennis history. He spent an incomprehensible 237 consecutive weeks ranked as world #1, a record that still stands untouched today. During this golden peak, Federer reached 10 consecutive Grand Slam finals, winning 3 Grand Slams in a single calendar year on 3 separate occasions: 2004, 2006, and 2007. He racked up 20 Grand Slam titles, 103 ATP singles titles, and held the world #1 spot for a total of 310 weeks. McEnroe consistently points out that Federer did something even bigger than winning trophies. He expanded the entire sport of tennis. Federer packed arenas in every corner of the world, drawing millions of casual fans into tennis through his grace, sportsmanship, and elegance, both on and off the court. So why does McEnroe now place Federer 3rd on his updated list? The answer comes down to the brutal reality of head-to-head rivalries and big match pressure situations over a 15-year timeline. As Federer built his empire, 2 younger phenomena emerged to challenge his throne: Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. While Federer dominated the rest of the tour, both Nadal and Djokovic managed to develop specific tactical game plans that cracked the Federer code in major Grand Slam finals. McEnroe points to agonizing losses for Federer, such as the 2008 Wimbledon final against Nadal, or the 2019 Wimbledon final against Djokovic, where Federer held 2 championship points on his own serve but failed to convert. Head-to-head, Federer ended up trailing both Nadal, 16-24, and Djokovic, 23-27, in their overall career series. McEnroe emphasizes that ranking Federer at number 3 is by no means a slight. It is simply an acknowledgement of how high the bar was raised by the two men who managed to statistically eclipse him. Federer remains tennis's ultimate artist, but in McEnroe's eyes, two competitors managed to surpass his raw output. At number 2, John McEnroe names the single greatest competitor in the history of professional sports, Rafael Nadal. If Roger Federer was tennis's Mozart, Rafael Nadal was its relentless gladiator. When Nadal broke onto the scene as a sleeveless, long-haired 19-year-old winning the 2005 French Open on his debut, nobody, including McEnroe, could have predicted that this young Spaniard would go on to rewrite the boundaries of human willpower. Nadal's claim to tennis immortality begins on the red clay of Paris. What Nadal accomplished at Roland Garros is not just the greatest achievement in tennis history, it is arguably the single most dominant feat in all of modern athletics. 14 French Open titles. A mind-boggling career record in Paris of 112 wins and just 4 losses. For nearly 2 decades, entering Roland Garros meant playing for second place because Rafael Nadal owned the Philippe Chatrier court. However, McEnroe is quick to shut down anyone who tries to label Nadal as merely a clay court specialist. Nadal transformed his game to conquer every surface on earth. He won 2 Wimbledon titles, defeating Federer on grass in 2008, in what McEnroe calls the greatest tennis match ever played. He won 4 US Open titles and 2 Australian Open titles, completing the double career Grand Slam. In total, Nadal amassed 22 Grand Slam titles, holding the all-time men's record for extended periods during the peak of the Big Three era. What places Nadal above Federer on McEnroe's list is his head-to-head superiority over the Swiss legend, combined with his unparalleled competitive intensity. In McEnroe's eyes, no athlete in sports history, whether you look at Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, or Tiger Woods, has played every single point of every single game with the ferocious, life-or-death intensity of Rafael Nadal. Nadal treated a first-round point at 15-0 with the same relentless desperation as a match point in a Grand Slam final. Furthermore, Nadal achieved all of this while fighting through chronic, career-threatening injuries. From Muller-Weiss syndrome in his foot to knee tendinitis and wrist splits, Nadal's body was constantly breaking down, yet he repeatedly resurrected himself to win major titles when doctors wrote him off. In McEnroe's analysis, Nadal's combination of 22 Grand Slams, 14 French Opens, mental fortitude, and his head-to-head dominance over Federer comfortably secures his place as the second greatest player McEnroe has ever seen. And now, at number 1, the undisputed GOAT of tennis, in John McEnroe's eyes, stands Novak Djokovic. Whatever your personal preference for playing style, aesthetic beauty, or fan personality, John McEnroe makes one thing crystal clear. When you look at the cold, hard, unassailable data of professional tennis, the GOAT debate is mathematically over. Novak Djokovic has rendered it undeniable. Think back to 2010. Roger Federer had 16 Grand Slams. Rafael Nadal had 9. Novak Djokovic had just 1. The tennis world viewed Djokovic as a distant third wheel in a dual monarchy. But then, Djokovic made a commitment to his diet, his physical flexibility, his movement, and his mental resilience that transformed him into the most complete tennis machine ever engineered. Over the next 15 years, Djokovic did the unthinkable. He chased down both Federer and Nadal, passed them both, and pulled away into a realm of statistical dominance that may never be matched again. Look at the resume McEnroe points to. 24 Grand Slam singles titles, the most in men's tennis history, surpassing Nadal's 22 and Federer's 20. Over 400 weeks at world number 1, shattering Federer's previous mark of 310 weeks by nearly 2 full years. 40 ATP Masters 1000 titles, the all-time record, triple career Grand Slam, winning every single Grand Slam tournament at least 3 times. Positive head-to-head records against both Roger Federer, 27-23, and Rafael Nadal, 31-29. Olympic gold medal, completing the exclusive career Golden Slam. McEnroe breaks down Djokovic's game from a technical standpoint. Djokovic possesses the greatest return of serve in the history of tennis, able to neutralize 130 miles per hour serves and place the ball deep at the server's feet. His two-handed backhand is an impenetrable fortress. His elasticity and sliding movement on hard courts allow him to turn defense to offense faster than any human who ever lived. But above all else, McEnroe highlights Djokovic's mental strength. Djokovic spent his career playing in stadiums where 90% of the crowd was actively rooting for Federer or Nadal. Instead of letting crowd hostility break him, Djokovic learned to absorb that negative energy and convert it into pure, focused execution. Time after time, when facing match points or hostile environments, Djokovic stood tall and refused to yield. McEnroe summarizes it simply: Djokovic entered an era ruled by two of the greatest athletes in human history, battled them both in their primes, conquered them both, and stood alone at the summit with every major record in his possession. For John McEnroe, Novak Djokovic isn't just the greatest player of his era. He is the undisputed #1 tennis player he has ever seen in his lifetime. That is John McEnroe's official ranking of the top 5 greatest tennis players he has ever seen. Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Pete Sampras, and Björn Borg. It is a list forged in the heat of rivalry, grounded in historical context, and backed by undeniable mathematical statistics. But now, the stage belongs to you. Do you agree with John McEnroe's order? Should Roger Federer still sit higher based on his peak impact on the sport? Does Pete Sampras deserve to be in the top 3 over Federer or Nadal? Or is Novak Djokovic's statistical dominance so overwhelming that nobody can ever challenge his throne? Drop your personal top 5 list down in the comments below. We want to read your takes and see how your list compares. If you enjoyed this deep dive into tennis history, hit that like button, share this video with fellow tennis fans, and make sure to subscribe to Tennis Next Point with notifications turned on. We bring you daily ATP news, technical breakdowns, tactical commentary, and deep dives into the stories shaping racket sports. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.